There is something buried in a Bulgarian archive that the modern world was never supposed to find. A session, a room, a blind woman and a general who walked in as a skeptic and walked out unable to speak for 3 days. What she told him in 1989 was sealed. Classified not because it was wrong, but because it was too precise, too geographically specific, too anchored in symbolic language that no illiterate peasant from the Balkans should have ever possessed. And what she saw that day pointed here, to this land, to this moment, to 2026. You are watching this video for a reason. That is not a platitude, it is a cosmological statement. Because the information you are about to receive has been circulating in whispered networks among researchers, among esotericists, among people who read the energy of civilizations the way a physician reads a scan, and almost none of it has reached the general population. What reaches the population is noise. What you are receiving now is signal. Stay with me. Because what Baba Vanga foresaw about the land of the eagle and the serpent is not a warning you can afford to process passively. Her name was Vangelia Pandeva Gushtarova, from Maven in what is now North Macedonia. At the age of 12, a tornado, not metaphorically, a literal atmospheric vortex, lifted her from the ground and deposited her in a field several kilometers away. When they found her, her eyes were sealed shut with dust and debris. She never saw again with physical eyes, but something else opened. From that moment forward, the woman who would become known simply as Baba Vanga began describing events that had not yet happened with a specificity that defied every statistical model. She described the death of Stalin before it became public knowledge. She described the sinking of the Kursk submarine in terms so precise. A vessel of iron will fall to the ocean floor and letters will be found. That Russian officials eventually confirmed she had spoken of it years prior. She described September 11th in 1989 as 2 steel birds will fall, the wolves will howl, and innocent blood will run like rivers. She described the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami as a great wave devouring shores and consuming thousands. She described the dissolution of the Soviet Union while Brezhnev was still alive. Her accuracy rate among documented and cross-reference predictions sits above 80%. That is not a coincidence. That is a channel. And she herself explained the mechanism, though few listened carefully enough. She did not say she saw visions. She said she felt the energy field of the future, the way a storm feels pressure before it breaks. She said that certain places, certain territories, accumulate karma the way a reservoir accumulates water. And she said that when a reservoir reaches its saturation point, the release is not optional. The release is physics. She called these territories karmic nodes. And in 1989, she identified one with unmistakable specificity. The session in question was conducted under conditions of Soviet-era secrecy. A Bulgarian general, a man of considerable rank and considerable skepticism, entered the session at the request of colleagues who had already been disturbed by her accuracy. He brought with him questions about global stability, about civilizational fault lines, about which territories would produce the convulsions that would define the 21st century. Baba Vanga paused when the line of questioning reached the Americas. She described, in her own words, a powerful nation built on the bones of ancient civilization. A land where the memory of the earth is long, and the memory of the people has been deliberately severed from it. She described a symbol, not a name, but a symbol that she said governed the spiritual identity of this place. An eagle holding a serpent in its mouth, standing on a cactus rising from a lake. She was illiterate. She had never traveled outside the Balkans. She had no access to world geography in any conventional sense. And yet she described, with unambiguous precision, the national symbol of Mexico. The general left the session unable to speak for 3 days. Now I need you to understand something before I give you the exact wording of what she said. Because once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. And the reason this information is surfacing now in 2026 is not accidental. The architecture of timing is never accidental. You do not receive information before you are capable of metabolizing it. The fact that you are here, in this moment, watching this, that is not passive consumption. That is positioning. Something in your field is already prepared for what you are about to receive. If this is landing in you as truth, if there is something beneath the rational mind that is vibrating in recognition, write the word Agula in the comments right now. Not as a ritual of superstition, but as an act of declaration, as a signal to the universe and to the network of people watching this that you are one of those who was meant to be awake for this. This is what Baba Vanga said about the land of the eagle and the serpent. These are her words, reconstructed from the documented session. There will be a great convulsion in the land of the eagle and the serpent. The sky will weep fire and water at the same time. Those who sleep will awaken violently. Those who are already awake must choose to flee or to become guides. The world will feel that movement long after, like ripples from a stone thrown into a lake. But the stone does not destroy the lake. The stone reveals its depth. Read that again, slowly, because she is not describing destruction, she is describing revelation. The sky weeping fire and water simultaneously. This is the language of simultaneous crisis vectors. Not one catastrophe, but the convergence of multiple systems breaking at the same threshold. Fire, the political, the conflict, the violence of polarization. Water, the environmental, the hydrological, the literal crisis of a city sinking into a drained lakebed while northern territories bake in historic drought. Those who sleep will awaken violently. This is not metaphor. This is the forced initiation of populations who have been insulated from the truth of their karmic condition by decades of distraction, by consumption and spectacle, and the managed anesthesia of modern civilization. The violence of awakening is not punishment. It is the shock of a system meeting its own reality, and those who are already awake, she is speaking to you, directly, across decades, across languages, across the barrier of her blindness and her death. She is saying, you will have a choice. You can flee into your own private fortress of survival, or you can become a guide, a stabilizing node in a destabilizing field. That choice is not coming. That choice is already here. Now let me show you the 5 signals that confirm we are living inside the fulfillment of this prophecy, not as possibility, as confirmation. The first signal is water. Mexico City, Tenochtitlan, the ancient lake city, the city that was built on water by the command of the Aztec sun, is sinking. Not slowly. At rates of up to 40 centimeters per year in certain zones, the megacity is descending into the drained basin it displaced 5 centuries ago. The aquifer beneath is collapsing under the weight of 22 million people, drawing from a source that no longer regenerates fast enough. In the north, Nuevo León endured a water crisis in 2022 that most of the world never heard about. A metropolitan area of 5 million people rationed to a few hours of water supply per day. She said the sky would weep water. The irony is that it is not weeping, it is withholding. The second signal is fire. The 2024 political transformation represented the most unprecedented institutional rupture in Mexico's modern democratic history. What emerged was not merely a change of administration, but a fracture, a visible crack running through the legitimacy architecture of every institution simultaneously. The judiciary, the military alignment, the relationship between federal power and regional autonomy. Polarization not as political disagreement, but as civilizational splitting, where 2 versions of reality now occupy the same territory and no longer share a common language. The third signal is the ground itself. Seismological data from regions that have historically registered as stable, zones atop the interior of tectonic plates rather than at their edges, is showing increased microactivity. The earth beneath the land of the eagle and the serpent is not still. It is preparing. The fourth signal is the migration current. More than 10 million crossing events have imprinted the northern corridor of Mexico with a concentration of collective human anguish that has no modern precedent. The Mayan traditions understood what modern psychology is only beginning to quantify, that land holds memory, that soil absorbs the accumulated emotional field of those who cross it, who bleed on it, who die on it. The northern desert has become one of the most energetically saturated corridors on the planet. That saturation does not disappear. It accumulates until something moves it. The fifth signal is geopolitical isolation. Mexico sits between the world's largest economy and the world's most rapidly expanding economic force. The pressure from Washington over fentanyl trafficking, over cartel sovereignty, over border management has never been more acute. Simultaneously, China's economic penetration through nearshoring corridors, through port infrastructure, through manufacturing dominance in the Bajío, is creating a dependency architecture that makes neutrality impossible to sustain. Mexico is being forced, by the geometry of global power, toward a decisive declaration. The era of strategic ambiguity is ending, and when it ends, it will send ripples across the entire hemispheric order. 5 signals, all simultaneously active, all converging in the same temporal window. Now I need to give you the layer that most researchers miss. Because they read the prophecy as disaster and stop there, they do not read it as she intended it. Baba Vanga understood, through whatever mechanism granted her sight, that karma is not punishment. Karma is accounting. It is the universe maintaining internal coherence. And when a karmic node reaches saturation, when the accumulated weight of what a civilization has done and left unprocessed reaches the threshold, the release that follows is not retribution, it is equilibrium. Mexico carries one of the deepest spiritual ledgers on the planet. The Aztec civilization understood something about cyclical time that Newtonian Western culture spent 5 centuries trying to erase. Their calendar systems were not primitive attempts at astronomy. They were consciousness maps. They were models of how energy moves through civilizational phases, how creation, expansion, corruption, collapse, and renewal are not a linear sequence, but a recursive spiral. The Mayan long count did not predict the end of the world, it predicted the end of a world age. The completion of a great cycle and the initiation of another. Teotihuacan, the city whose very name translates as the place where men become gods, was designed not as a monument to power, but as a technology of transformation. Its axial geometry, its alignment to the Pleiades, its spatial organization around the Avenue of the Dead, these are not decorations. They are operating instructions for civilizational ascension. The people who built it understood that matter and consciousness are not separate domains. That architecture can be a tool for altering the frequency of human awareness at scale. This knowledge was not lost. It was preserved, hidden, inside communities, inside oral traditions, inside the ceremonial practices that survived the colonial obliteration through disguise and subtlety, and the kind of stubborn ancestral intelligence that no external force can fully extinguish. What Baba Vanga saw was not just a convulsion. She saw an activation, the ancient memory of this land rising to the surface, violently, necessarily, the way a seed cracks its shell not through destruction, but through the irresistible pressure of what wants to live. The eagle and the serpent are not adversaries. In the esoteric tradition preserved within Mesoamerican symbolism, they represent the integration of 2 principles that modern civilization has severed. The eagle is elevated vision, the capacity to perceive from above the temporal noise, to see the arc of things, to understand cycles rather than react to moments. The serpent is earthly wisdom, the intelligence of the body, the memory encoded in the land itself, the kundalini of civilizational consciousness that moves through the ground before it moves through the people. When they are integrated, what you get is not conquest. What you get is the Quetzalcoatl principle, the feathered serpent, the union of heaven and earth, the archetype of the teacher who holds both dimensions simultaneously and offers that integration to a world that has forgotten it is possible. That is the seed Baba Vanga saw being planted in the convulsion. Now let me speak to you directly about what this means for you, wherever you are watching from. Because here is what she understood about the ripple effect. A stone thrown into a lake does not disturb only the water immediately around it. The disturbance travels concentrically, without diminishment of its fundamental pattern. The shape of the original disruption is preserved in every subsequent ring. What happens in the land of the eagle and the serpent in 2026 will not stay there. The geopolitical reverberations through migration patterns, through trade architecture, through the hemispheric security order, through the dollar's relationship to emerging multilateral frameworks, will reach every continent. But the deeper ripple, the one that Baba Vanga's language points toward, is not political. It is spiritual. When an ancient civilizational memory activates under pressure and begins producing its signal again, when indigenous wisdom systems that hold the technology for living in coherence with natural cycles start surfacing in the global conversation, that frequency does not respect borders. It transmits through the quantum field of collective consciousness the way a radio signal transmits through the atmosphere. It reaches the people who are tuned to receive it. You would not be watching this if you were not already tuned. She described 3 types of people who will exist when the convulsion comes. And I want you to understand which one you are. The first type sleeps. They are embedded in the normalized reality of their daily routine. They have organized their lives around the assumption that the systems they were born into are permanent. When the convulsion arrives, they will wake violently, as she said, and their first experience of truth will be traumatic because it will be forced. They are not less valuable than others. They are simply further from their own awareness. The convulsion will serve as their initiation. The second type flees. These are people who have already sensed that something is wrong, who feel the pressure building, who have perhaps prepared materially, who understand the signals intellectually, but whose response is to contract, to withdraw, to build walls around what they have and wait for the storm to pass from behind fortified isolation. This is not cowardice. It is an understandable instinct, but it is incomplete because the storm does not pass. It transforms, and no fortress survives transformation by pretending to be outside it. The third type are the guides. These are the ones Baba Vanga addressed directly when she said those who are already awake must choose. Not that they are awake by accident, not that they are special by some cosmic favoritism, but that something in their trajectory, the questions they have asked, the suffering they have metabolized, the willingness to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into false comfort, has positioned them to hold coherence when coherence is most needed. If you have been on this channel, if you have spent time sitting with these frameworks, if you have felt the planetary transits not as abstract symbols, but as lived pressures in your own psychology and your own relationships, then you are not a passive spectator of what is coming. You are part of the structure that will either hold or fail to hold the collective field through the passage. Now I am going to give you something that most commentators on Baba Vanga's Mexico prophecy have missed entirely. A layer beneath the prophecy that operates as a hidden code within her symbolic language. She said the sky would weep fire and water simultaneously. In the astrological framework that was operative in 1989, which is also the framework now operative in 2026, the simultaneous presence of fire and water as active crisis vectors corresponds to a specific celestial architecture. We are in the window of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, a transit that last occurred in the early 1880s and was associated with the dissolution of empires, the collapse of colonial frameworks, and the forced re-emergence of suppressed cultural identities. Saturn in Aries dissolves the structures that have been maintained through force rather than through coherence. Neptune in Aries dissolves the illusions that have been maintained through narrative rather than through truth. What happens when both are active simultaneously in the fire sign of sovereign identity and primal will? You get the land of the eagle and the serpent activating its deepest memory, precisely when the global order is most structurally vulnerable. This is not coincidence. This is the architecture of historical timing, operating exactly as the ancient framework said it would. The Mesoamerican calendar systems identified this type of convergence as a Nexiuhilpilli, a binding of years, a threshold point where multiple temporal cycles complete simultaneously and the fabric of ordinary reality becomes permeable to what lies beneath it. The last full Nexiuhilpilli threshold was in the mid-20th century, associated with the restructuring of the entire global political order following the Second World War. We are in the next one. Let me give you the three practices that the tradition itself, the very tradition whose activation Baba Vanga foresaw, recommends for those who want to function as guides rather than casualties in a threshold moment. The first is alignment with cyclical time. Not the linear calendar of consumption and productivity, but the cyclical calendar of energy, phase, and natural rhythm. Begin tracking the moon. Begin tracking planetary stations. Begin living in a framework where time is not a straight line running toward a fixed destination, but a spiral running through recurring patterns that can be read and worked with. The people of this land survived colonialism's assault on their consciousness precisely because they maintained this relationship to cyclical time when everything else was being destroyed. The second practice is ancestral coherence. Whatever lineage you carry, whatever land your people came from, whatever trauma your ancestors survived or perpetuated, the work of healing that thread is not personal therapy. It is civilizational contribution. When you clear an ancestral pattern, you do not just free yourself. You alter the field that everyone connected to that pattern inhabits. In a moment of karmic purification at the collective scale, individual ancestral healing work is some of the most powerful geopolitical work available to a human being. The third practice is community anchoring. The isolation model, the individual sovereign, the self-sufficient fortress, is the response of the second type, the fleers. The guides understand that consciousness is not a solo phenomenon, it is a network phenomenon. What one node in the network holds, it extends. Find the people in your immediate physical environment who are asking the same questions. Create the conditions for a community of awareness. Not ideology, not dogma, awareness. The willingness to perceive clearly and act in coherence with what is perceived. These three practices are not preparation for the convulsion. They are the convulsion meeting its intended response. I want to leave you with a final image that I believe Baba Vanga was pointing toward when she ended her prophecy with the image of the lake and the stone. A lake that has a stone thrown into it does not remain disturbed. The ripples travel outward, and eventually the surface returns to stillness. But it is not the same stillness. The lake has been moved. The sediment has shifted. Something that was settled at the bottom has been disturbed and redistributed. The lake is the same lake, but the lake knows something now that it did not know before the stone arrived. That is what a civilizational convulsion does when it is metabolized by people who are awake enough to metabolize it. It does not erase the civilization, it redistributes its wisdom. It brings to the surface what has been settled at the bottom, the ancient memory, the suppressed knowledge, the technology of consciousness that modern civilization built its comfortable anesthesia on top of. The world will feel that movement, she said, long after, not as tragedy, as signal. The question she is asking you across 37 years, across languages, across the barrier of death itself, is not whether the convulsion is coming. That question has already been answered. The question is what kind of consciousness you are bringing into it. If this reached you, it reached you because something in you was already pointed in this direction. That is not flattery, that is recognition. The same ancient intelligence that is encoded in the land of the eagle and the serpent is encoded in the human beings who carry the memory of wholeness into the age of fracture. You are one of those human beings. Not by accident, by trajectory. Write Agula in the comments if you felt this as truth. Share this video with the one person in your life who you already know is awake but may not know what they are awake for. Subscribe if you want to continue receiving the kind of signal that the algorithm actively suppresses, because the most dangerous content in the attention economy is not violence or controversy, it is clarity. And remember what she said: those who are already awake must choose. You are choosing right now, in this moment, by the quality of your attention and the depth of your willingness to receive what this moment is actually asking of you. The lake is being moved. The stone has already fallen. The ripples are already traveling. Be the guide.